Muslim Spain, Al-Andalus. A land where empires clashed, caliphs ruled with grandeur, and warriors fought for glory. This was an era where science illuminated the world, art reached breathtaking heights, and architecture stood as a testament to human brilliance. But Al-Andalus wasn't just a single golden age. It was a saga of ambition and betrayal, of dynasties rising in triumph and crumbling in chaos. From the Umayyads to the Taifa kingdoms, from the Almoravids to the Nasrids, every chapter is filled with epic battles, political intrigue, and shifting tides of power. So join me as we unravel the dramatic rise and fall of Muslim Spain, a story of conquest, culture, and conflict that shaped history forever. The late 7th century was an age of unstoppable conquest. The mighty Byzantine fortresses of North Africa, once symbols of imperial dominance, crumbled before the relentless Arab advance. In 698, Carthage, one of the greatest cities of antiquity, fell, marking the end of Byzantine rule in the region. But this was just the beginning. In 705, Al-Walid I, the powerful Umayyad Caliph of Damascus, entrusted Musa bin Nusayr with a monumental task: to bring the western frontier under firm Muslim control. Musa, a seasoned general and brilliant strategist, not only crushed resistance, but also brought the vast lands of North Africa under the Umayyad banner, pushing as far as Tangier. Yet it was not just a military conquest. Musa faced the even greater challenge of spreading Islam among the fiercely independent Umayyads. But across the narrow waters of the Mediterranean, a new opportunity loomed. Ceuta, a strategic fortress on the edge of the Iberian Peninsula, was ruled by Count Julian, a Christian noble with his own agenda. His reasons remain shrouded in mystery. Was it ambition, revenge against the Visigothic king Roderick, a desperate gamble to secure power? Whatever his motives, history was about to take a dramatic turn. An unlikely alliance was forged, a pact was made, and soon Muslim armies would set foot on European soil, led by the fearless general Tariq ibn Ziyad. The fate of Al-Andalus was about to be decided. Would the Visigoths see the storm coming before it was too late? Stay with me as we unravel one of history's most thrilling conquests. In the dying days of the Visigothic kingdom, Spain was a land of division, betrayal, and political chaos. The year was 710, and the throne of Hispania was in turmoil. When King Witiza died, his faction, the Witizens, were cast aside, stripped of power by the usurper, Roderick. Desperate and seeking revenge, they sent a fateful call for help beyond the Mediterranean, to a rising force that had already shaken the world, the Muslim Umayyads. That call was answered. In April or May of 711, a fearless Berber general, Tariq ibn Ziyad, led an army across the strait that now bears his name, Jabal al-Tariq, Gibraltar. His forces, composed mostly of battle-hardened Amazigh warriors, landed on the Iberian shores. By July, they met Roderick's army in a decisive clash that would change history. The Visigoths, fractured and leaderless, crumbled. Roderick himself vanished, drowned in a river, slain in battle, or simply swallowed by the legends of the fallen. But victory was not enough. Tariq marched north, seizing Toledo, the very heart of Visigothic power. He did not stop there. The great cities of Iberia, from Córdoba to Seville, fell like dominoes. Word of the swift conquest reached the ears of Musa bin Nusayr, the governor of North Africa. Determined to solidify the new dominion, he led a second wave of Arab forces into Spain in 712. Crushing the last vestiges of resistance and seizing Merida after a grueling siege. By 713, Musa had reached Tariq in Toledo. Together, they pushed even further, sweeping across Zaragoza and into the northern mountains, forcing the inhabitants to either submit or flee. By 714, the conquest was nearly complete. Most of the Iberian Peninsula now lay under Muslim control, but victory came at a cost. Both Musa and Tariq were abruptly recalled to Damascus by the Caliph, never to return. Their conquests, however, would lay the foundation for Al-Andalus, a new Muslim realm in Europe. The rapid fall of the Visigothic kingdom was not just due to military brilliance. It was also an internal collapse. Hispano-Visigothic society was fractured, its people divided by class and religion. The Jews, long persecuted by Visigothic rulers, welcomed the Muslim arrival. The burdens of taxation were lighter under the new rulers, and for many, conversion to Islam offered newfound freedoms. Former serfs who embraced Islam became mawali, advancing into society as freedmen. Even those who remained Christian or Jewish found themselves better off than under the rule of the old Visigothic kings. Thus, in the first half of the 8th century, a new society emerged in Al-Andalus. The Arabs stood at the top, divided between the original conquerors of 712 and later Syrian arrivals of 740. Below them were the Amazigh warriors, who had made up the bulk of the invading force and continued to arrive from Africa in waves. The native Musalama, converts to Islam, soon became the majority, shaping the very fabric of the new Andalusian identity. Meanwhile, Christians and Jews remained under Muslim rule, their numbers gradually dwindling over the centuries. From 711 to 756, Muslim Spain remained under the control of the Umayyad Caliphate in Damascus, a period known as the Dependent Emirate. But this era was far from peaceful. Arab factions and rival social groups vied for dominance. Yet expansion continued. The Muslim forces pushed beyond the Pyrenees, striking deep into the heart of Frankish Gaul. Then, in 732, came the battle that would halt their northern ambitions. At Tours, the Franks, led by the legendary Charles Martel, crushed the advancing Muslim army under ʿAbd al-Raḥmān al-Kafiki. It was the first major defeat of the Islamic expansion into Western Europe, and the beginning of a slow retreat. Meanwhile, across the sea in North Africa, tensions boiled over. A massive Amazigh rebellion erupted against Arab rule, sending shockwaves through Al-Andalus. Entire regions were depopulated as Amazigh settlers fled back to Africa. To restore order, the Umayyads sent a Syrian army under Balj bin Bishr, but instead of stabilizing the situation, they introduced new rivalries between Arab factions. The fractures within Muslim Spain deepened. Everything changed in 756. Amid the chaos, a fugitive prince arrived. ʿAbd al-Raḥmān, first al-Dakhil, the last surviving heir of the once great Umayyad dynasty, which had been overthrown by the Abbasids in the east. With fire and determination, he seized power in Al-Andalus, breaking away from the Abbasid Caliphate. Though he did not claim the title of caliph, he ruled as an independent emir, ensuring that Al-Andalus would never again be a mere outpost of a distant empire. This was the dawn of a new age, an age of splendor, of science, of art and architecture. But it was also an age of conflict, of rivalries, and of empires rising and falling. The story of Al-Andalus was just beginning. And what a story it would be. After carving out an independent emirate in 756, ʿAbd al-Raḥmān first faced a daunting challenge: keeping it. Al-Andalus was a land riddled with internal divisions, foreign threats, and rebellious factions. Yet, with an iron will, he forged a new Arab state, securing his dynasty's rule for centuries to come. ʿAbd al-Raḥmān first ruled with both generosity and brutality, rewarding loyalists with wealth and power, while crushing any sign of dissent. He built his authority on the eastern aristocracy, whose support he secured with land and riches. But he did not hesitate to turn against them when they defied him. He strengthened his hold by aligning with religious scholars, ensuring the support of Orthodox Islam, while keeping potential opposition in check. Externally, his rule was no less perilous. The northern Christian kingdom of Asturias refused to submit, and ʿAbd al-Raḥmān led punitive campaigns to keep them at bay. To the east, the Abbasids, his family's mortal enemies, plotted against him, hoping to overthrow the last Umayyad prince. And in 778, he faced a direct challenge from one of Europe's greatest rulers, Charlemagne. Seeing an opportunity to expand his influence, Charlemagne launched a campaign into Al-Andalus, laying siege to Zaragoza. But the siege failed, and as the Frankish forces retreated through the Pyrenees, they suffered a devastating blow. At Roncesvalles, Basque warriors ambushed Charlemagne's rear guard, slaughtering them in a surprise attack that would be immortalized in legend. The defeat, retold in the medieval epic The Song of Roland, marked the limits of Frankish ambition in Iberia. While Charlemagne managed to hold parts of the Pyrenees, the Muslim counteroffensive would soon push back. By 785, the forces of Al-Andalus reclaimed Girona, and in 801 they seized Barcelona. The death of ʿAbd al-Raḥmān, first in 788, left his heirs struggling to maintain stability. His son Hisham I, 788 to 796, and grandson al-Hakam I, 796 to 822, faced intense revolts, especially in Toledo, where rebellions were put down with merciless force. With the Arab nobility turning against them, the emirs increased their reliance on Berber and Slavic mercenaries, imposing new taxes to fund their armies. Then came a new force of opposition, the Mozarabs, Christians who lived under Muslim rule but refused to assimilate. During the reign of Abdur-Rahman II, 822 to 852, Al-Andalus entered an era of political, cultural, and administrative transformation. The emir sought to strengthen ties with the Islamic East, bringing a wave of Orientalization to Iberian society, introducing Baghdadi customs, governance styles, and artistic influences. But not everyone embraced this change. Among the Christian population, a radical faction led by Eulogius and Alvarus rejected the growing Arabization of their people. In a deliberate act of defiance, they publicly insulted the Prophet Muhammad, fully aware that this was a capital offense. Though the emir tried to persuade them to recant, they refused, preferring martyrdom. From 850 onward, more than 50 Christians were executed for blasphemy. This movement, however, failed to gain widespread Christian support, and by 859 to 860, the execution stopped. The Mozarab leadership distanced itself from the radicals, and Islamic culture continued to thrive in Al-Andalus. While internal conflicts threatened to divide the emirate, external enemies continued to strike. In 844, a new terror emerged, the Vikings. Norse raiders sailed down the Atlantic, pillaging the coastline and attacking Seville. But Abdur-Rahman II's forces crushed them, killing hundreds and forcing the survivors to flee. Learning from this invasion, he built two powerful naval bases, one in Seville and another in Pechina, Almeria, ensuring that the Vikings would never again threaten Al-Andalus. Meanwhile, relations with the Franks remained complicated. Abd al-Rahman II exchanged ambassadors with the Byzantine Empire and Charles II, the Bald, maintaining diplomacy while keeping his enemies in check. But the greatest internal challenge to Umayyad rule came not from foreign powers or Christian rebels. It came from within Islam itself. By the late 9th century, a new force was rising, the Muwallads, native Iberians who had converted to Islam. Though they shared the faith of their rulers, they resented Arab dominance and sought independence. The Banu Qasi clan in the north and the rebellious Umar bin Hafsun in the south led full-scale uprisings against Córdoba's rule. For decades, the Muwallad rebellion plunged Al-Andalus into chaos. Umar bin Hafsun, a formidable leader, turned Bobastro into an impenetrable stronghold, waging war against the Umayyads for nearly 40 years. The revolts bled the emirate dry, leaving it weak and vulnerable. When Abdur-Rahman III ascended to power in 912, he inherited a fractured state, but unlike his predecessors, he was relentless. From the moment he took the throne, Abdur-Rahman III embarked on a brutal campaign of reconquest, subduing Al-Andalus city by city. His forces smashed the rebels from Jaén to Zaragoza, from Mérida to Seville. Even the legendary Ibn Hafsun, after decades of defiance, made a fatal mistake. He publicly converted back to Christianity. This alienated his Muslim allies, leading to his downfall. When Ibn Hafsun died in 917, his sons tried to continue the fight, but the Umayyads were too strong. By 928, Abdur-Rahman III finally conquered Bobastro, the last rebel stronghold. With his enemies vanquished, he would go even further. In 929, he declared himself Caliph of Córdoba, severing all ties with the Abbasids in Baghdad and claiming supremacy over the entire Islamic West. Under his reign, Al-Andalus would reach its golden age. Science, architecture, and culture flourished, and Córdoba would become the most advanced city in Europe. But for now, the wars had only just ended, and the dream of Al-Andalus was only beginning. In the shadow of political and religious turbulence, ʿAbd III's early reign was marked by a pivotal moment in Islamic history. As the Umayyads of Spain faced an unprecedented challenge, the legitimacy of their caliphate in the eyes of the broader Islamic world became a daunting question. The fragile unity that had once tied the vast lands of Islam under the Caliphate of Baghdad crumbled when the Fatimids, heretical and audacious, seized power in 910 in Tunis. Their rise ignited a fierce struggle for supremacy, prompting Abd al-Rahman III to take a bold stand. In 929, he crowned himself as the Caliph of Córdoba, adopting the title al-Nasir and severing his allegiance to Baghdad. With his claim to the Caliphate in place, the stage was set for a dramatic transformation. The internal unity of Al-Andalus was secured in a series of decisive military victories, the most significant being the fall of Toledo in 933. Yet, the path to absolute power was not without its setbacks. The catastrophic defeat at Simancas in 939 threatened to undo all of his gains, but the strategic vulnerabilities of the Christian kingdoms in Spain opened new avenues for diplomacy. Through deft alliances with powerful figures such as Otto I of Germany, the Pope, and even the Byzantine Empire, Abd al-Rahman III solidified his position, not just as a ruler, but as the unchallenged master of the Iberian Peninsula. Meanwhile, the Fatimid Caliphate, eager to extend its reach into the Maghreb, was met with fierce resistance from al-Nasir. Determined to keep the North African region under his control, he seized the vital ports of Melilla and Ceuta in 931, setting the stage for a brutal naval and land conflict that would span decades. The Umayyad struggle with the Fatimids was a battle of ideologies and empires, but in the end, as the Fatimids shifted their focus eastward, the Umayyads seized the moment, filling the power vacuum in the Maghreb with ruthless efficiency. As al-Nasir's legacy passed to his son, al-Hakam II, the Caliphate continued to flourish. But the peace was fragile, and with the rise of the formidable al-Mansur, a new chapter unfolded. The master tactician and statesman, al-Mansur crushed opposition and consolidated power in a reign marked by a relentless series of raids that devastated Christian Spain. Yet his iron grip on power was not to last forever. His son, al-Muzaffar, inherited the mantle, continuing his father's policies. But his sudden death left the Caliphate vulnerable to internal discord. With the demise of Abd al-Rahman Sachuelo in 1009, the empire's unity unraveled. A terrifying period of anarchy and civil war took hold, where the once mighty Umayyad Caliphate fractured into a myriad of petty kingdoms, or taifas. These fractured realms, each vying for control, could not hold back the rising tide of Christian expansion from the north. The once dominant Muslims of Spain were forced into humiliating tribute payments, their weakening authority, creating cracks in the very foundation of Al-Andalus. In the midst of this chaos, the arrival of the Almoravids, a fierce Amazigh confederation from North Africa, set the stage for the next great confrontation. Yet, the damage had been done. The golden age of Al-Andalus, once a beacon of power and culture, was slipping into its past. The demise of the Umayyad dynasty was imminent, and with it the fall of an empire that had once commanded the Mediterranean world. The stage was set for an epic clash of empires. In 1086, the Almoravid ruler Yusuf ibn Tashufin, a man of unwavering ambition and military brilliance, stormed across the straits from North Africa into the Iberian Peninsula. His forces, like a tide of destiny, surged toward the fields of Al-Zalaka, just north of Badajoz. There, in a fierce confrontation that would echo through the ages, he crushed a Castilian army led by the mighty Alfonso VI. Victory was his, but it was fleeting. The Almoravids, unable to press the advantage and shattered by logistical challenges, withdrew back to the Maghreb, leaving the Christians to lick their wounds and regroup. For 2 years, uncertainty gripped the lands of Al-Andalus. The Almoravid presence faltered, their policy unsure and wavering. But the Siege of Aledo in 1088, an event that would prove to be a turning point, shattered any remaining doubts in Yusuf ibn Tashufin's mind. The very heart of Spanish Islam was teetering on the brink of collapse, and only one force could restore its former glory: the obliteration of the fractious and fractured Taifas. In 1090, Yusuf unleashed a devastating campaign, toppling the rulers of Granada and Malaga, followed swiftly by the fall of Almeria and Sevilla in 1091, and Badajoz in 1093. One by one, the rulers of these splintered states fell to the might of the Almoravid juggernaut. Yet amidst this tidal wave of conquest, one figure stood defiant: Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, known to history as the legendary Cid. Exiled from his homeland of Castile by the hand of Alfonso VI, the Cid carved out his own destiny in the heart of Muslim Spain. Resplendent as both warrior and ruler, he established an independent kingdom in Valencia, a new Taifa that refused to bow to the Almoravid onslaught. A mercenary at first, the Cid's brilliance as a commander, coupled with his unparalleled grasp of Almoravid tactics, allowed him to hold his ground against the superior Almoravid forces. His ability to recruit skilled administrators among the Mozarabs and the efficiency of his military strategies turned Valencia into a resilient stronghold. His death in 1099 marked the beginning of the end for his city, but the legacy of his resistance would resonate long after. By 1102, Valencia was lost to the Almoravids, and with its fall, their dominance seemed unchallenged. But even as the Almoravids seemed poised for unrestrained conquest, the tides of history began to turn. In 1110, under the leadership of Ali ibn Yusuf, the Almoravids captured Zaragoza, securing their grip on the region. Yet this victory, so hard won, heralded the beginning of the empire's decline. The Christian kingdoms, emboldened by their own growing strength and unity, launched an unrelenting offensive. Alfonso I, the battle-hardened king of Aragon, and his stepson Alfonso VII of Castile, united their forces in a furious wave of reconquest. In 1118, Zaragoza, the jewel of the Almoravid realm, fell to Alfonso I. The valleys of the Jalan and Jaloca, once under Muslim rule, were reclaimed for Christianity. The Almoravids, now fighting a desperate rearguard action, found themselves weakened by internal strife. In Africa, the fervent preachings of the reformer Muhammad bin Tumart ignited a revolutionary movement among the Amazigh, further destabilizing the Almoravid grip on power. Even in the face of mounting adversity, the Almoravids struck back in 1134, securing a narrow victory over the Aragonese at Fraga. But it was a hollow triumph. The Almoravids, stretched thin across 2 continents, lacked the strength to capitalize on their victory. Their empire was crumbling, their forces exhausted, and their enemies closing in from all sides. The Christian forces, now unified and emboldened, pressed forward, their victory over the Almoravids only a matter of time. Thus, the Almoravids, once the mightiest force in Iberia, faded into history, their power fractured and ultimately eclipsed by the relentless march of Christian expansion and internal decay. In the scorched sands of North Africa, the winds of change howled across the desert, and from this tempest of turmoil, the Almohad dynasty rose like a fierce storm. Led by the resolute ʿAbd al-Mumin, the successor to the radical reformer Ibn Tumart, the Almohads swiftly conquered vast territories, leaving the fractured remnants of the Almoravid Empire in their wake. With their power firmly rooted in Africa, ʿAbd al-Mumin's gaze turned westward toward the disarrayed and vulnerable Muslim states of Spain, the second Taifas, born from the collapse of their predecessors. These fractured kingdoms, each torn by internal conflict, seemed to offer the perfect opportunity for unification under the Almohad banner. Among these states, one rose above the rest, led by the ambitious Ibn Mardanish. Between 1147 and 1172, he defied the odds with the help of Christian alliances, seizing control of Valencia, Murcia, Jaén, and securing Granada and Córdoba. His achievements, however, were bittersweet, for the very alliances that bolstered his rise were also the harbingers of his eventual downfall. The age of fragmentation in Spain had arrived. The Almohads, now firmly in control of North Africa, assumed the title of caliph and launched a series of harsh reforms, tightening the reins on religious orthodoxy. Jews and Christians across the empire were given a stark choice: convert to Islam or leave. The Almohads' uncompromising stance on religious unity was meant to strengthen their hold, but it also sowed the seeds of conflict within their realms. Under the rule of two towering figures, Abu Yaqub Yusuf, from 1163 to 84, and his son Abu Yusuf Yaqub al-Mansur, from 1184 to 99, the Almohads pushed the limits of their power, driving Western Islam to the zenith of its might. Yet even as al-Mansur triumphed in 1195, crushing the forces of Castile at the Battle of Alarcos, the shadow of fate loomed large. Just as the Almoravids had faltered after their victory at Al-Zalaqa, al-Mansur found himself unable to capitalize on his success. The looming specter of Christian power grew ever stronger. Years later, in 1212, at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, the Christian forces struck back, crushing the Almohads and creating a power vacuum in Spain. In this chaos, the fragmented Taifas sought to regain their lost glory, with the Banu Hud of Murcia and the Nasrids of Arjona rising to prominence. Among the Nasrids, one name would echo through history: Muhammad I bin al-Ammar, who in 1238 established the Nasrid dynasty in Granada. This dynasty would endure for 2.5 centuries, yet the flames of conflict never ceased to burn. The Christians, led by Ferdinand III, relentlessly encroached upon the Muslim territories, reclaiming Jaén, Córdoba, Sevilla, and Murcia. Valencia and the Balearic Islands fell to the Christian forces of James I the Conqueror, and by the mid-13th century, only Granada, Minorca, and the tiny area of Crevillente remained as the last vestiges of Muslim rule in Spain. Granada, though a shadow of its former self, continued to resist. The Nasrids, recognizing the shifting tides of power, played a dangerous game of diplomacy, alternating between alliances with the Africans and the Christians. This precarious balance of power was tested in the early 14th century, as the Banu Marines in North Africa and the Christian monarchs of Castile fought for control of the strategic ports of Tarifa and Algeciras. Granada, ever the chess player, played its hand carefully, at times siding with the Africans, at times with the Christians, hoping to stave off the inevitable collapse. As the 14th century unfolded, Granada's fortunes fluctuated. The reign of Ismail I, from 1314 to 25, saw the kingdom check the ambitions of Alfonso II of Castile. But in 1340, the decisive Battle of the Salado shattered the Maghribian forces. By the time of the reign of Muhammad V, from 1354 to 59 and from 1362 to 91, Granada had reached its peak, with a cultural renaissance fueled by brilliant scholars and poets. But the cracks in the facade were deepening. As Christian power grew, so too did the xenophobia and intolerance within Granada's walls. The Maghribians, under constant pressure from the Portuguese, looked to rigid Islamic ideals as their last defense. By the end of the 15th century, the end was nigh for Granada. Muley Hassan, the Sultan of Granada, defied the Catholic monarchs by refusing to pay tribute and seizing the town of Zahara in 1481. This act of defiance ignited a war that would bring the final days of Andalusian Islam. Granada, once a beacon of Muslim civilization, was caught in a web of internal strife. The royal family was fractured, and Muhammad XII, the son of Muley Hakan, sought to navigate the treacherous waters of politics, eventually allying with the Christians to rid himself of his rebellious father and the rival Zagal. But even as he gained the throne, the siege of Granada loomed. The city's fall was as dramatic as it was inevitable. After years of bitter conflict and internal betrayal, the Christians finally breached the gates. On January 2, 1492, Muhammad XII officially surrendered, marking the end of Muslim political power in Spain. Yet even in defeat, Granada's legacy endured. The Muwallad, the Muslim communities that remained, would continue to live under Christian rule for centuries to come. their fates forever tied to the tragic, heroic fall of the last great Muslim kingdom on the Iberian Peninsula. And so, the story of Al-Andalus comes to a close. An empire that rose to unparalleled heights of cultural brilliance, scientific innovation, and architectural wonder, only to fall under the weight of internal strife, shifting alliances, and the relentless tide of history. From the towering minarets of Córdoba to the lush gardens of Granada, the legacy of Muslim Spain lives on, woven into the very fabric of the Iberian Peninsula. Though the final fall of Granada in 1492 marked the end of Muslim political power in Spain, the echoes of Al-Andalus can still be felt today. In the language, the art, the architecture, and the rich cultural exchange that shaped the world. The rise and fall of this extraordinary civilization is a reminder of the fragility of empires, the strength of resilience, and the enduring power of culture to transcend time. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history of Muslim Spain. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring the stories that shape our world.